Part 163. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 1621. Chapter 1621 Ronkai, 6. She has been practicing poison for many years, and the poison in her body is already very deep, and will soon invade her internal organs. By then, even if Hua Tuo is alive, there will be nothing left to do. Rong Si took a breath of cold air. He didn't know whether it was the cold weather or something else, but this breath of cold air directly chilled his heart. Rong Si shivered, looked at Lan 11, and said seriously, "Thank you Lan 11, thank you for everything. You have done enough for us. In the following days, you should live well for yourself." Lan 11 is not a fool, she understood the meaning behind Rong Si's words. Rong Si didn't want to continue to be treated. He didn't want to owe her any more, and he didn't want to have anything to do with Lan 11 anymore. He wanted to drive her away. Even if Fanyan died, he would have nothing to do with Lan 11. Such euphemistic words, somehow, are more hurtful than directly saying, "We can never be together for the rest of our lives." Such a reply that people can't refute seems to be for her own good, but in fact it cuts off a clear way out. All possible outcomes are eliminated. Even if she wanted to refute, she couldn't find a starting point. Because he was right, they were nothing. He didn't need any more treatment, and she should be gone. Lan 11 sniffed, pretending to be strong, and met Rong Si's gaze. "What about you, what are you going to do?" Rong Si laughed dryly and did not answer. What to do? In the days without Sanskrit, Rong Si would have a nervous breakdown just thinking about it. If it really happened, he didn't know what he would do. Rong Si, you also have a great life. You have many things to do. You can't collapse because of. Lan 11 paused and continued, "You can't collapse." Rong Si still said nothing. Lan 11's eyes turned red and she whispered to herself, "Do you like her that much? Like him so much that he can completely ignore himself for her, love him so much that he will die of discomfort if he loses her?" Rong Si's eyelids moved. "I'm sorry." The meaning of an unfinished apology is self-evident. Lan 11 sniffed, "In that case, let me try and see if I can save her." "Can't." Rong Si refused without hesitation. "This is my own choice, you have nothing to feel indebted to." Lan 11 clenched her fists, biting each word hard. "Lan 11, calm down. Obviously you are the least calm person. You can die for Sanskrit, and I can die for you and the person you like." Lan 11 burst into tears suddenly, raised her voice, and continued, "Instead of waiting until Fanyan is really dead and seeing you like a walking corpse, it would be better for me to sacrifice myself and fulfill you so that you too can be happy. In this way, at least the three of us will have too. It is possible to be happy, which is the result of maximizing interests. Maximizing profits." Rong Si cursed in anger, "That's your life, you know? What right does a person who doesn't even cherish his own life have to love others?" "Yes, people who don't even cherish their own lives have the right to love others." Lan 11 asked Rong Si in return. Rong Si paused and softened his tone. Seeing Lan 11 with tearful eyes, Rong Si cursed in a low voice, Lan 11 said with a tearful voice, "Obviously you know everything, but you still have to be a fool, right? In the recent final exam, the stupid double-degree author can't afford to hurtkik, so he will update for a while and make up for it at the end of the month." End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 1622. Chapter 1622 Ronkai, 7. This is my own business. Rong Si paused for a moment, his pupils shrank, he looked into Lan 11's red eyes, and finally looked away, not looking at her. Yes, this is his own business. She is just an outsider and has no right to interfere. Lan 11 sniffed, wiped her tears, and said, "Wrong Ci, tell me, if Sanskrit is really, what will you do?" Wrong Ci closed his eyes and took a breath. Wrong Ci didn't answer. Lan 11 knew what the answer was, even if he was just lying to her. But he didn't even want to give her a reason to lie to her. "Wrong Ci, I just hope you can live well." After Lan 11 said this, he turned and left. Wrong Ci looked at Lan 11's frail figure as he left. During this period, he had been forcing himself not to pay attention to Lan 11, who was gradually getting weaker. However, it was obvious that in order to save Fanyan, Lan 11's own body couldn't bear it. If Wrong Ci has been sorry to anyone in his life, it was Fanyan before, but now it is Lan 11. These two women are exactly the ones Wrong Ci doesn't want to hurt the most. There is a time when fate is so wonderful. The day that Fanyan left, the weather was very good and the sun was very warm. Fanyan suddenly said to Wrong Ci, "Wrong Ci, I want to watch the sunset. Everyone else likes the sunrise, but only Sanskrit likes the sunset. After sunset, there is an endless night." Fanyan used to love watching the sunset, and when she was dying, she also wanted to watch the sunset one last time. Sanskrit sounds belong to the night, and she will only look up to the sky in the long dark night. She likes the stars, the moon, the night sky, and their cool, dazzling but not burning brilliance. She was afraid of the sun and the dazzling light during the day. She did not dare to be exposed to the sun. She felt that she was dirty and guilty. And the sun made it impossible for her to escape. Wrong Ci trembled when he heard the word once in Sanskrit words. I don't know if it was a tacit understanding between the two people, but at this moment, Wrong Ci suddenly realized that the time had come. His Sanskrit will leave him forever. Wrong Ci did not act hysterical, and did not even frown and shed a tear. He didn't want Fanyan to leave with such a memory of him. Fanyan said that he liked his smiling face, so he would definitely smile in the end. Wrong Ci helped Fanyan get out of bed. Fanyan had been lying on the bed during this period. She hardly got out of bed except for washing and going to the toilet. Because it was so physically painful, every step I took was torture. But today, Sanskrit feels relaxed, a kind of liberated relaxation. Her life has been too hasty and she has been living in darkness. In her next life, she wants to be a carefree person. Have your own pursuits and dreams, and have things you like to do. Don't worry about waking up in a pool of blood, don't worry about the eyes staring at you in the dark. Fanyan leaned on Ronkai's shoulder, watching the sun in the west slowly approaching the distant mountains. Wrong Ci's hands held Fanyan's cold hands. Wrong Ci's palms were very warm, but no matter what, Fanyan's hands could not be warmed. Fanyan's mouth corners raised, revealing a gentle smile. Wrong Ci, I seem to have seen what you looked like when I first saw you. Wrong Ci also smiled softly, well, my expression must have been very silly at that time. Ha ha. Sangyin smiled. Wrong Ci almost forgot, it turns out that Sanskrit laughter can be so clean. Like a child without any worries. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yun Suya. Chapter 1623. Chapter 1623 Ronkai, 8. When I first saw you, I thought that if there were really angels in the world, they would look like you. Wrong Ci said childishly. Fanyan's eyebrows were curved, in the eyes of others, I am a witch, but only in your eyes, I am an angel. You always have been, no matter what others think of you, you have always been my angel. Speak word for word, very seriously. Wrong Ci, I was abducted when I was very young. I have no parents, no relatives, no friends. I only have you. Sometimes I think selfishly, since there are still people in this world who love me, then I have nothing. No matter what, it would be better to stay with him for the rest of my life. But the facts tell me that I can't. Maybe I have already spent all my luck in this life when I met you, so I will keep paying this debt in the rest of my life. But wrong, see, I don't regret it at all, because meeting you is the best thing in my life. Sangin spoke very slowly and intermittently, but Rong Si listened to every word deep in his heart. He wants to remember every word of Sanskrit and never forget it in the days to come. Fanyan knew that she didn't have much time, and all she wanted to say next was to Rong Si, and all her words were about Rong Si. In her short and dark life, only her words are worth remembering. Rong Si, thank you for liking me. Thank you for everything you have done for me. If there is an afterlife, I will never run away again. The Sanskrit's voice is getting weaker and weaker. Rong Si's heart clenched into a ball. Fanyan has experienced a lot of darkness in this world. She has never received love from her native family and has been a child who lacked love since she was a child. Later she was abducted and saw the dark side of the world. Because of her good looks, she was changed hands several times. From body to soul, she was humiliated when she was young. After finally escaping, she met Jun Di, who took her to a place similar to an orphanage. There she met Rong Si, the only light in her life, and she thought her suffering had come to an end. She began to gradually accept the world, but later, Jun Di brought her into contact with goo insects. The last bit of light in her life was extinguished. At that time, she realized that the gentle and approachable Jun Di was just a smiling tiger. The children he adopted all had ulterior motives. Everyone's destiny is under his control. Let her resist in every possible way, but she has no room to refuse. To stay there, for Rong Si. She chose to compromise. The process of practicing goo was painful and torturous. Fanyan saw many people die due to the poison's backlash, but she survived stubbornly. She was the only one who succeeded. It's just that she didn't expect it. The price of success is not to stay, but to leave and carry out the tasks given by Jun Di. The first task Jun Di gave her was to kill one of her friends with a goo insect. The young Fanyan was unwilling and resisted to the end. In the end, because of Jun Di's various coercion and inducements, she accidentally made a mistake and accidentally killed the man with goo insects under Jun Di's frame. Later, everyone justifiably suspected that she had done it, and everyone isolated her. Including her only word of faith, she also doubted her. Sanskrit reached the bottom of despair. Later, Jun Di took the opportunity to take her away. Forced her to kill one person after another. Sanskrit music completely wiped out human nature, became Jun Di's murder tool, and became a feared witch in the world. I didn't mean to write Sanskrit to death, after all, I am a sweet writer, but it just happened naturally when the story developed to this point. Fanyan has always been the only tragic character in this book. The world does not love her, but Rong Si and I both love her. At this time, for Fanyan, death is actually a kind of relief. According to her temperament, even if she does not die, she will not be able to accept herself and Rong Si being together with such a riddled body. This is the he that belongs to Sanskrit alone. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 1624. Chapter 1624, Ronkai, 9. After a life full of twists and turns, she finally returned to Rong Si. It's actually quite nice to be able to die like this. Sanskrit thinks it's enough. Sangyin leaned on Ronkai's shoulder, and Ronkai's warm body feeling came from the palm of his hand. The sun was setting in the west, and its radiance was warm and light. Fanyan's eyes gradually narrowed, and the field of vision in front of him became increasingly narrow. When Fanyan saw the world for the last time, Rong Si smiled warmly at her, his eyes were bright, but he was still smiling. Rong Si leaned over, closed his eyes, and kissed Fanyan's lips gently. However, by the time Rong Si opened his eyes, Fanyan had already closed his eyes forever. Rong Si could no longer hold back the turmoil in his heart, and tears burst out of his eyes. He hugged Fanyan's cold body tightly and cried loudly under the sunset. His Sanskrit, the Sanskrit he had guarded for so many years, the Sanskrit he had loved for so many years, still left him. That night, Rong Si didn't know how he got here. Xia Ying and the others had been comforting him, but Rong Si had a dull expression on his face and said nothing. During those days, Rong Si was like a walking corpse. Everyone wanted to find Lan 11 back, but there was no trace of Lan 11. Because of the departure of Sanskrit, everything has undergone subtle changes. When Lan 11 learned the news about Rong Si, he had completely changed. He completely closed himself off from this world. There was nothing in this world that he was attached to, and all he wanted to do was seek death. Lan 11 guessed that Rong Si would be in this situation, but when she saw it with her own eyes, her heart still felt like needles pricking her heart. Lan 11 stretched out her hand towards Rong Si. Rong Si, follow me. Rong Si looked at Lan 11 strangely. Who are you? Lan 11 frowned. She didn't know if Rong Si had really forgotten her, or if he was just escaping. Lan 11 took Rong Si away. Since he has been escaping from reality, Lan 11 thought, let him completely forget that memory and start over. Lan 11 found many ways to clear Rong Si's memory of Sanskrit music. She has tried everything from psychological therapy to chemical and physical therapy. Later one day, Lan 11 asked Rong Si as usual, Rong Si, do you still remember the Sanskrit sounds? Rong Si raised his head and looked at Lan 11, his beautiful eyebrows blinking. Who is Fanyan? Lan 11 was completely relieved. It took her a year to finally make Rong Si forget the Sanskrit. Although his memory was gone, Lan 11 still found Rong Si behaving strangely. He likes to look up at the stars at night and count the stars one by one, looking very focused. Sometimes, he remains motionless, as if he is thinking about something, as if he is missing something. At this moment, Lan 11 asked him, Rong Si, what are you doing? Rong Kai replied, I'm looking at the stars. Lan 11 sat next to Rong Si and watched the stars with him. Rong Si looks at the stars, and Lan 11 looks at Rong Si. Rong Si's eyes were distant and lonely. She seemed to have never seen the warm look on Rong Si's face when Fanyan was still around. That kind of expression that only belongs to the Sanskrit sound and disappears as the Sanskrit sound leaves. Rong Kai, do you want to go home? Lan 11 asked. Rong Si shook his head, his eyes still focused on the night sky. Then do you want to stay with me? When Lan 11 asked this question, he was extremely cautious, as if he would break something if he wasn't careful. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 1625. Chapter 1625 Rong Kai, 10. Rong bid farewell. Under the clear light of the moon, Lan 11's eyes were sparkling and particularly moving. Lan 11 bit her lip gently and looked at Rong Si. Rong Si could see his lifeless face in the reflection of Lan 11's pupils. Rong Si responded softly, turned away his face again, and continued to stare at the night sky. Lan 11 felt indescribably excited at the moment. Rong Si said that he would be with her forever. Regardless of the kind of being together, it at least means that Lan 11 can see him in the future. Lan 11's eyes welled up with tears. She had never expected this day to happen. She never thought that since then, her love would have reached such a humble level. She didn't care whether Rong Si cared about her or not, as long as she could stay with him all the time, she would be bubbling with joy. Lan 11 gently leaned his head on Rong Si's shoulder. Rong Si's eyelashes fluttered and he glanced sideways at Lan 11's rosy face. It seemed that she could still hear her breathing rapidly because she was too excited. Rong Si pursed her lips and said nothing. Rong Si and Lan 11 spent a peaceful and stable life. Lan 11 rarely saw Rong Si smile, but she never saw him shed tears again. Rong Si would sometimes ask Lan 11 suddenly, "Did I forget something important?" Lan 11 took a deep breath and answered him seriously, "I've told you everything you should know. It doesn't matter what you forgot." Rong Si nodded, "Okay." Then he looked into the distance in a daze. Rong Si always liked to be in a daze. When he was alone, he was always in a daze. Lan 11 sometimes asked him, "Rong Si, what are you thinking about?" "I'm just thinking, I don't know what I'm thinking." Rong Si always answered like this, or said, "I'm thinking, I want to go to a place like a paradise without anyone disturbing me." Later, Lan 11 really found a paradise for Rong Si. The two of them built a cabin there and lived there. The scenery there is picturesque and the spring water is clear. Rong Si planted a vegetable garden there and raised some poultry and small animals. Sometimes Lan 11 would look at Rong Si getting close to the animals for a long time. Sometimes she thinks that it would be nice to live like this all her life, like a couple of gods and goddesses, living in seclusion in the mountains and forests, not caring about worldly affairs and not being disturbed. But such days did not last long. A few years later, shadow hunters suddenly found them. He held them hostage and took them away without any explanation. Lan 11 was extremely scared, but when she was scared, she kept emphasizing, "Let him go, he doesn't remember anything now, he can't help you or anything." Rong Si held Lan 11's hand and said gently, "Lan 11, don't be afraid, everything will be fine." Lan 11 was stunned and stared at Rong Si blankly. "Rong Si, do you still remember about the shadow hunters?" After Lan 11's treatment, Rong Si should have forgotten most of his memories and most of the people. Memory is difficult to control, and Lan 11 has no way to accurately make Rong Si forget only the people and things related to Sanskrit. So after the treatment, Rong Si could not remember many things. Rong Si nodded, looked at Lan 11, and said, "Remember. It will be okay." After Rong Si said this, Lan 11 felt a little more at ease. Later it was proved that the shadow hunters did not do anything to them. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 1626. Chapter 1626 Ronkai, 11. The shadow hunters want to convince Rong Si to help them take revenge. However, Rong Si couldn't remember anything. But even so, they still held Rong Si hostage as their puppet. It seemed that as long as Rong Si was around, their organization would never fall apart. It's just that even though they had expected everything and prepared everything, they just didn't expect Yu Lingfeng to be so powerful. Moreover, Qian Yanjiu also stood on Yu Lingfeng's side and opposed them. A group of them, dozens of people in one organization, could not defeat two of them. Just as they were fighting, Rong Si and Lan 11 secretly left. When Rong Si and Lan 11 were hiding in the dark to watch the battle, Rong Si kept looking at Yu Lingfeng intently. Lan 11 couldn't tell what kind of look he had. But I always felt that Rong Si seemed to be thinking about something when he looked at Yu Lingfeng. "Do you remember him?" Lan 11 asked. Rong Si nodded. Rong Si has always known that the man came from an alien planet, but he never knew how powerful he was. Now it seems that he far exceeded his expectations. Lan 11 looked at Rong Si's side face and suddenly asked, "Rong Si, you haven't forgotten, right? You've never forgotten those things, right?" I remember Shadow Hunter and Yu Ling Feng, how could I not remember Sanskrit? Lan 11 gradually began to believe that Rong Si had not forgotten anything from the beginning. He was just deceiving himself, or just deceiving Lan 11. After all, Lan 11 had sacrificed so much to help Rong Si get out of that dark situation. Rong Si might just be following the trend and pretending that he had forgotten, but in fact he had not forgotten at all. Rong Kai lowered his eyes slightly and paused before turning his head and answering Lan 11, I forgot. Lan 11 looked at Rong Si's smiling face. The more he looked at it, the more unfamiliar it became. Lan 11 bit her lip and said nothing. Just a pair of twinkling eyes, staring at Rong Si motionlessly. Rong Si stretched out his hand, squeezed Lan 11's hand with his warm and dry palm, and said softly, let's go. Lan 11 said nothing, nodded, followed Rong Si, and left quietly. While on the road, Lan 11 kept looking at Rong Si carefully. There was no subtle emotion that could be captured on Rong Si's face, so Lan 11 sighed. Blue tide. Rong Si suddenly spoke. Hearing the sound, Lan 11 raised his head and met Rong Si's gentle but opaque gaze. Let's get married, now, right away. Lan 11's pupils dilated violently, and even his breathing stopped at this moment. Lan 11 stopped and stood there, staring at Rong Si, trembling her lips, and it took a long time before she said anything, are you serious? Rong Si nodded, well, let's get married. Yes, but... Lan 11 swallowed his words halfway through. But you don't like me. You don't like me, why do you want to marry me? She seemed to know the answers to all the questions Lan 11 wanted to ask. And because she knew the answer, she couldn't ask. But as long as Rong Si didn't say anything, she seemed to be able to deceive herself and tell herself that Rong Si might also like her a little bit. At least, Rong Si was willing to accompany her for the rest of his life. The night when Rong Si and Lan 11 completed the marriage registration procedures, Rong Si looked up at the starry sky. The starry sky tonight seemed to be particularly bright. Rong Si looked at the boundless starry sky and murmured, Fanyan, I'm married. As you wish, I'm married to Lan 11. Rong Si thought of Sanskrit at dusk that day and the last words he said, Rong Si, when I die, stay with Lan 11 and marry her. I don't want you to be alone, you are too lonely. Rong Si's chapter is over. The next chapter is about Muni Ankai and Hanzija. Let's call it, the chapter about the solar term couple 233. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 1627. Chapter 1627 Extra Chapter of the Chi Couple, 1. I am going to get married. On the day Hanzija successfully proposed, he posted this on WeChat Moments. It was around 7 p.m. when it was posted, and it was 8:30 p.m. when Hanzija came out of the gym. When I clicked on WeChat, the chat box exploded. There is a day when a prodigal son can turn around. So who tamed your wild horse? Get married? Are you getting married? So fast? Did the woman force you with the baby in her belly? I told you not to be so wild and enter the grave of marriage so early. Amen. Senior Hanzija, if you are kidnapped, just blink. Grass. Mary. I still believe you if you say you are going to become a monk. Those who expressed shock were all old friends who had not been in contact with Hanzija for a long time, so they simply did not believe that such a suddenly announced that he was getting married in his 20s, when he could still be a libertine. The comments under the moments are also varied. 99, be happy. Muni Ankai. Is it Muni Ankai? Captain didn't expect you to be very affectionate. So the prodigal son will eventually meet true love, and he will be more infatuated than anyone else. No photos of the bride-to-be, bad review. There are a bunch of girls who have lost their love. Did you get married so early? Hansaja, who told me about celibacy in the first place, you. The captain and his wife want 99 ducks. Hansaja came out of the shower and after replying to the people in the dialogue box one by one, Muniankai also sent a final message. I am not ready yet, why did you send it out? Hansaja clicked on the voice button. The voice he had just finished taking a shower was lazily and hoarse. When Muniankai played it, his ears felt numb. Muniankai, let me know what I said. Even if you don't marry me, I will have to take you back to my house in a sack. Do you understand, Muniankai's face heated up. She kept playing with the corner of her clothes with her left hand and curled her lips. I'm still very young. I haven't had enough fun. What if I meet someone better in the future and I regret it? Hansaja was silent for a long time, and then said in a tone and emotion that Muniankai couldn't recognize, just wait. Muniankai was stunned and was about to say something, but Hansaja had already hung up the phone. Muniankai bit her lip and sat on the sofa, wondering if she had made Hansaja angry. It was not that she was unwilling to marry Hansaja, but Hansaja suddenly proposed a few days ago. When she was happy, she nodded stupidly and agreed. After a few days of relief, she began to feel dazed again, thinking about whether it was too early to get married at this time. She had just graduated from college, and Hansaja was gradually accepting her family's career, which was just starting out. Moreover, Muniankai was even more flustered as she had just received a group of blessing WeChat messages from a group of people after seeing Hansaja's circle of friends. Muniankai told Tanguoer how she felt. Tanguoer said that she just had premarital phobia and it was normal. Muniankai doesn't know what phobia is before marriage. She only knows that she feels very unsure now. It felt like Muniankai was timid for the first time in her life when it came to marriage. After a while, Hansaja called Muniankai, I'm downstairs at your house. Come out. Muniankai looked out the window, and Hansaja raised his head and met her eyes. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 1628. Chapter 1628 Extra Chapter of the Chi Couple, 2. It is already the depth of winter, and the snow is falling heavily outside. Hansaja, wearing a black coat and a dark brown scarf, looked up at Muniankai. Muniankai noticed that Hansaja's face was not very pretty, but his eyes were still staring straight at Muniankai upstairs. Muniankai swallowed, and then said to Hansaja on the other end of the phone, come up here, it's so cold, you'll catch a cold. Hansaja's voice on the other end of the phone was cold, you're not going to marry me anyway, so why do you care if I catch a cold? Muniankai chuckled, are you naive, Hansaja? Hansaja kept looking up at Muniankai, with small snowflakes flashing on his eyelashes. Come up quickly, my parents are out, the servants are on holiday, and there is no one at home. You will regret it if you call me up. Muniankai saw the corners of Hansaja's mouth rising, revealing an intriguing smile. Muniankai snorted, you will regret it if you don't come up. That makes sense. Hansaja smiled, and then said to the other end of the phone, open the door. Wearing slippers, Muniankai ran over and opened the door for Hansaja. As soon as Muniankai opened the door, Hansaja rushed towards Muniankai and hugged her tightly in his arms. Muniankai shivered. Hansaja's body was cold, but his embrace was still warm. When Muniankai touched Hansaja's fingertips, a cold touch hit her. Let go, it's suffocating me to death. Muniankai said. Hansaja let go and looked at Muniankai's face seriously, say, if you don't want to marry me, do you want to go to heaven? How can there be a better man than me in this world? Even if there is, that it's impossible for a man to fall in love with you. Muniankai rolled her eyes. Hanzaja, you are sick. I'm just not ready yet. I'm still very young, and there are endless possibilities in the future. I don't care what your future possibilities are, whether or not I am. The most important thing is. Hanzaja took off his scarf and coat, and the heater inside quickly warmed him up. Hanzaja was wearing a white sweater with fine fluff, which looked clean and good looking. Muniankai handed Hanzaja a glass of hot water. Hanzaja took a sip, looked around and said, "Is there really no one at home?" "Yes." Muniankai replied, "Didn't I tell you just now? You bring a man home when there is no one at home." "Muniankai, you are acting wildly." Hanzaja raised his eyebrows and said in a strange tone, "Don't you think it's weird to say this from your mouth, the romantic young Master Han?" Muniankai said calmly, "What's more, you are my boyfriend and no one else." Hanzaja suddenly walked up to Muniankai, leaned over, held her chin, narrowed his eyes and stared at her. "It's good that you know." After saying that, Hanzaja pushed Muniankai down on the sofa and kissed her. Muniankai fluttered a few times at first, but after realizing that it was of no avail, she fell into Hanzaja's lingering embrace. Hanzaja kissed Muniankai until her face turned red before letting her go and said one word at a time, "Marry me." Muniankai rolled her eyes and wondered, did this guy come here in the middle of the night to force a marriage? What if I don't get married? Hanzaja glanced sideways and met Muniankai's stubborn eyes. "You really don't want to get married?" "Yes, really not." Muniankai's next words were blocked by Hanzaja's lips. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 1629. Chapter 1629 Extra Chapter of the Chi Couple, 3. Hanzaja, you stinking scoundrel, let me go. Muniankai struggled and pushed Hanzaja away, then wiped her red and swollen lips from Hanzaja's kiss and glared at him. "What are you so crazy about today?" Hanzaja still had a cold face, then stared at Muniankai. "One last question for you, are you going to marry me?" "If you don't want to get married, I won't get married. I won't get married," Muniankai said angrily. Muniankai hates being forced the most in her life. She is naturally rebellious. The more you force her to do something, the less she wants to do it. Just like now, she was still hesitating whether to marry Han 11, but now Hanzaja is threatening and tempting her, and he wants to forcefully kiss her without discussing it. She is angry and feels very unhappy. She just won't marry. Look at Han 11. What else could Jay do to her? Hanzaja was really angry too. He could tolerate Muniankai in some ordinary things in life. Only this matter is non-negotiable. He has changed so much for this girl, but this girl is still hesitant about whether to marry him or not, and now she has decided not to marry him. Hanzaja and Muniankai had a conflict for the first time in their relationship. Unlike before, Hanzaja would feel aggrieved and beg for explanation. This time, Hanzaja was really angry. So Hanzaja picked up his coat and left without saying a word with a dark face. Muniankai looked at Hanzaja and was about to call him to stop him, but she swallowed the words when she reached her lips. She shouldn't bow her head. It's clearly Hanzaja's fault. Why should she be forced to marry him? Why can't she be given a chance to think about it? After a while, Muniankai was lying on the bed, thinking about what had just happened, and the more she thought about it, the more she couldn't sleep. Then I checked my friend's circle and found something was wrong. Hanzaja deleted that circle of friends. So the guy was really angry with her. Hanzaja couldn't sleep, so he called a few friends to come out to dance, and then went to the bar to drink. The friend was puzzled and asked, "Aren't you going to get married? Why do you have such a dark face?" Hanzaja became angry when he heard this, and said angrily with a black face, "No one is willing to get married." The friend was stunned and said, You are Hanzaja. You are rich, handsome, and so many girls want to marry you." Hanzaja didn't say anything and took a long sip of wine. Yes, there were many girls who wanted to marry him, but he just fell in love with Muniankai, who had a bad temper and was unwilling to marry him. Perhaps he is really at heart. I don't know what you see in Muniankai. A friend sighed sincerely, "If she doesn't marry you, who would dare to marry her?" Hanzaja rolled her eyes at him, "Don't say bad things about him, Muniankai is very cute." The friend rolled his eyes and said, "Damn it, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You are so drunk that you still don't forget to protect the calf. You are the only one who thinks that tigress is cute." Hanzaja glared at him, "Who are you talking about, a tigress?" Seeing that Hanzaja might be serious, my friend curled his lips and hesitated. Okay, your Muniankai is the cutest, I really can't stand your stubbornness. Where is the Master Han I knew before? Why? Now he has become a complete girlfriend slave." Hanzaja didn't speak and kept drinking. He didn't listen to advice and kept drinking until he was drunk and lost consciousness and couldn't get up. The friend had no choice but to help him go home. Sorry for the sloppy update during this time. The exam is over. We will resume normal updates tomorrow. Try to update as much as possible. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 1630. Chapter 1630 Extra Chapter of the Chi Couple, 4. Muniankai worked hard until midnight and couldn't fall asleep. At first, Muniankai was angry with Hanzaja. Muniankai started to wait for Hanzaja's call, but she waited for 2 full days. When she was young, Hanzaja refused to call her. According to the general rule, when she and Hanzaja quarreled, Hanzaja would admit her mistake within an hour. But today, Hanzaja hasn't sent her a message yet. Muniankai began to wonder for the first time, was she wrong? What is Hanzaja doing now? Haven't you ever thought of coming over to admit your mistake to her? Have you fallen asleep? Muniankai began to think wildly, and then began to get nervous intermittently. She stared at her phone from time to time, just to see if Hanzaja would take the initiative to contact her. After 3 o'clock in the morning, Muniankai began to despair, and she didn't know how she fell asleep. "All I know is that when I woke up, it was already 12 noon the next day." The first thing Muniankai did when she woke up was check her phone. She finally saw an unread message on WeChat. She went in excitedly but found that it was not from Hanzaja, but Tencent News. Muniankai was so angry that she threw her phone aside and said angrily, "Well, Hanzaja, at worst, you just don't contact me for the rest of your life." Although Muniankai said this, after 3 days passed and Hanzaja still didn't contact her, Muniankai completely collapsed. Is that guy playing a cold war with me? How dare he play a cold war with himself? Muniankai naturally would not be the first to bow her head and admit her mistake. After Muniankai struggled for a few days, she went to find Tanguoer to see if Tanguoer could come up with any useful ideas. Tanguoer almost choked to death with a sip of tea after listening to Muniankai's narration. Tanguoer stared at Muniankai in disbelief. Muniankai was indeed very haggard. Although the dark circles under her eyes were covered by makeup, her lack of energy was still obvious. "Why don't you want to marry him?" Tanguoer also didn't understand Muniankai's thoughts. Muniankai was startled and thought about it carefully. "It's not that I'm unwilling, but I'm just not ready yet." "But you can't say such things. Hanzaja will think that you don't want to marry him, and of course he will be angry." Tanguoer said seriously, "You should make it clear to him, just say that you are not ready yet." "Okay, I don't believe that Hanzaja is still planning to force you into marriage." Muniankai sighed, "Hanzaja hasn't contacted me for a long time. He may be really angry with me. Tanguo smiled helplessly. Go and admit your mistake to him. He likes you so much, so he will definitely not be able to bear to be angry with you. He just doesn't feel safe. After all, he has been in love with you for so long, and you are still not willing to marry him if he proposes to you. Give it to him, he will definitely feel uncomfortable. Mu Niankai pouted, I don't want to take the initiative to admit my mistakes. Hey, how can you think so? Tanguo said, love is a matter for both parties. It can't always be Hanzaja who is doing the work. He will also be tired. Besides, think about liking Hanzaja. There are so many girls, and if he is willing to marry you at this age, it means that he really likes you. If Hanzaja is seduced by another girl during this period, I think you will have no place to cry. Went. End of this chapter.